So with 11th edition now in full swing and I've played a game and spectated a few, let's continue where I left off in the last video learning how to play 11th edition with an idiot's guide to force dispositions, since there are quite a few of them and I can discuss which ones might suit your army. And yes, I know this should have been made before learning how to play Warhammer, but it's my channel, I do what I want. So let's talk about it. Hello everyone, it's me, the Warhammer complainy guy, Revan/Handy, destroyer of wallets, and maker of terrible financial decisions. Back with another video teaching you how to play Warhammer. And this really is my longest video to date, so please don't let it die in the algorithm day one and share it around if you can. I worked really hard on it and it shows me you guys want to see longer videos as opposed to my usual 12-minute or less videos. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of our new way to play the game, I just wanted to quickly thank everyone for supporting the channel. I recently hit 30k subscribers, and if you found this video helpful by the end of it, I would greatly appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed. Super hyped if you're on mobile, and you can also ask any follow-up questions when I'm streaming on YouTube or Twitch. Plus, maybe use my affiliate link and code from Starforge for some cool officially licensed Warhammer merchandise. And if you like what I'm doing and want to be a Giga Chad, maybe become a channel member too. Anyways, so, as I'm sure many of you know by now, all the detachments currently available to us all have these dispositions next to them, those being Take and Hold, Purge the Foe, Disruption, Reconnaissance, and Priority Assets. Each one is like a special theme to your army and their detachment, and I'm gonna try and summarize what each category means in the simplest terms, with Take and Hold being all about objective control, Purge the Foe being of course kill, so pretty straightforward. Disruption is doing things that would disrupt your opponent, forcing them to take side quests to stop you. Recon, you do recon around the board, so moving around basically spotting enemies and going around objectives as the theme. And finally, priority assets. This is when your priority is on a certain type of objective, contrary to just holding objectives if I'm understanding this correctly. Certain dispositions also have what are called operation markers, where at the start of the battle, you place 5 operation markers and 5 terrain pieces not in your deployment zone, and these 5 markers will basically be what helps you score points, and your opponent might have to go on a side quest depending on where you place them to remove them for their disposition, and not all dispositions use these operation markers. Now most of these also revolve around holding objectives like we're normally familiar with, since most of them say from battle round 2 onward, control objectives for X amount of points. Okay, so there are 25 different missions, 5 for each disposition type, and the one you play depends on your opponent's force disposition and vice versa. And because this is going to be another long video, I'm going to go down the list of the 5 missions for each disposition type, starting with Take and Hold, then Purge the Foe, Reconnaissance, Disruption, and finally Priority Assets. Then I'll finish with what's probably going to be the best disposition in general, and I'm pretty sure it's Purge the Foe. Of course, it's the f***ing kill mission. But I will explain my reasoning as to why, of course, later on in the video. So you want to keep in mind when building a list, can the units I choose fulfill the requirements of the force disposition of my current detachment? Because 3DP detachments have 1 disposition, and you're locked into that disposition. Then if you do a 2+1, you get to choose what disposition you play, so also keep that in mind. I will go over this in more detail when I do another list building video, because my old video is more geared towards building an army around how you want to play, since everyone just did the same thing in past editions with random secondaries sprinkled in. So overall, we have to take into account now the units we take, and how difficult or easy it is for them to accomplish the mission objective of their force disposition. So Take and Hold is your classic Warhammer we all know and love, centered around taking and holding onto objectives, with some of them having a little extra pizzazz to them. And honestly, this is the most bare bones of all the mission types, so this is probably going to be the shortest section of the video. But all Take and Hold really boils down to is parking your ass on an objective and holding them for as long as possible as previous editions. And of course with your secondaries too, which will also be a future video. The first primary mission is Battlefield Dominance, which is the Take and Hold mirror match. So in this one, you have to of course hold more objectives than your opponent. To score victory points in the first and second battle round, if you control more objectives, you get 2 victory points, and then the second battle round onward, at the end of your phase, you get 3 victory points for each objective you control, and then if you also control your home objective, you get an additional 2 victory points for each objective. So if I control my home base and 3 other objectives, I get an additional 6 victory points. Next is a movable object. This is when your opponent is playing Purge the Foe. So this one requires you to control center objectives to get victory points, and this applies during any battle round. So if you're able to yeet a unit that far up the board turn 1, you get 3 victory points if you control 1 or more center objectives. Then in battle round 2 to 4 at the end of your command phase, you get the classic 5 victory points for each objective you control that isn't your home objective. And at the end of your turn in the 5th battle round, same thing, 5 victory points for each objective you control that isn't your home. Determined acquisition is when you're fighting disruption. In any battle round during the end phase, you get 2 victory points for each objective you didn't control at the start, excluding your home objective. Then the 2nd battle round onward at the end of your command phase or end phase in the 5th battle round, you get 3 victory points for each objective you control and an additional 3 victory points for each objective within your opponent's territory you control, which really just means you control their half of the board. Purge and Secure is when you're fighting reconnaissance. This one has a little extra spice to it. In any battle round at the end of your turn, you can choose how you get victory points that round. So you can get 3 victory points by destroying 1 or more enemy units by a friendly unit within range of 1 or more objectives you control, or you can get 3 victory points for destroying 1 or more enemy units that started within range of an objective. Then from the 2nd battle round onward, at the end of your command phase or end of your turn in the 5th battle round, you get 4 victory points for each objective you control excluding your home, and you also get 3 victory points at the end of your turn for each objective you didn't control at the start of your turn. Then finally is Inescapable Domain. This is when your opponent is using priority assets, and this is probably the simplest one. During any battle round, if you control 3 or more objectives at the end of your turn, you get 4 victory points. And the 2nd battle round onward at the end of your command phase or the end of your turn in the 5th battle round, if you control 2 or more objectives, you get 5 victory points, and if you control more objectives than your opponent, you also gain 4 victory points for a total of 9 victory points if you satisfy both. Also, this is just a quick side note, if the data card has a hash line between the 2 criteria, you score based upon which has been fulfilled. So it's possible to control 1 or more objectives than your opponent and get victory points, even if you control 1 objective and not control 2 or more. Then at the end of the battle, you get 5 victory points if you control your opponent's home objective. So my recommendation is if you're going to play a detachment using Take and Hold, I suggest taking units that are both fast and tough, because Take and Hold is all about objective control, and that's really all you have to worry about. But since we're all used to this kind of playstyle, honestly any list will work. And if it worked before dispositions were even a thing, it'll work just fine now. So that's Take and Hold. Very simple. So, Purge the Foe, aka kill and hold an objective maybe. This is the easiest and most overpowered disposition in my opinion, because it's just so straightforward and easy to accomplish because it prints victory points. Since on top of just holding objectives, you also kill to get victory points, which is pretty straightforward. You're doing more killing than actions, and if you're doing actions, you aren't killing, which means it's harder to score for other dispositions than it is for Purge the Foe detachments. It's honestly the most brain dead of all of them, because no matter which disposition your opponent is using, you're always going to be destroying them for easy victory points. Which is why I feel like we might see some detachment point adjustments after the first 2 or 3 major tournaments. But the first mission is Unstoppable Force, which is when your opponent is using Take and Hold. So in any battle round when you destroy 1 or more enemy units, you get 3 victory points. Then in the 2nd battle round onward at the end of your command phase, or end of your turn in the 5th battle round, for each objective you control that isn't your home objective, you get 4 victory points per objective. Then at the end of your turn, you get 3 victory points if you control any objectives that you didn't at the start of your turn, excluding home of course. And then at the end of the battle, you get 5 victory points if you control 1 or more of the center objectives. Also, I'm sure you probably noticed that some of these 2nd battle round onward conditions are used in other dispositions, so also keep that in mind when building lists, because while it might be focused around more than we're used to, objectives are still important. Meat Grinder is probably the simplest of all of them because it's the mirror match, where in any battle round destroying 1 or more enemy units at the end of phase, you score 3 victory points. Then in the 2nd battle round onward at the end of your command phase, and at the end phase of the 5th battle round, if you control 1 or more objectives, excluding your home, you get 4 victory points. And then at the end of your turn, you get 5 victory points when you destroy more enemy units than what units you lost in the previous turn, and you can score an additional 5 victory points when you control your opponent's home objective. Meat Grinder is probably going to be the most commonly played mission because so many people are playing Purge the Foe detachments. Punishment adds some extra spice on top of your normal kill and control objective mission, and you play Punishment when you're playing against Disruption. At the start of each of your turns, you choose 1 to 3 enemy units in range of an objective, or an enemy unit that destroyed a friendly unit the previous turn. Those units are now condemned until your next turn. to score victory points in any battle round if one or more condemned units left the battlefield, aka they were destroyed, or to f up their plan if they're on an objective and that unit has uppies on the first turn, you can condemn them to not only screw up any plans they might have had, but also score a free 5 victory points. So in short, you can condemn a unit that can go into reserves on the board turn 1 and they're on an objective, and they have to either leave that unit on the board or risk giving you a free 5 victory points, since the card specifically states and is as written, one or more condemned units left the battlefield, and going into reserves counts as leaving the battlefield. Then from the second round onwards and the end of your 5th turn, you get 4 victory points for controlling one or more objectives excluding your home objective, and an additional 5 victory points if you control more objectives. Then at the end of the battle, you get an additional 8 victory points if you control your opponent's home objective. Overall, I can see the cheese strat I mentioned really screwing over anyone playing Disruption if they plan on pulling any turn 1 shenanigans. Consecrate is the reconnaissance matchup, and it's another brain-dead easy mission for Purge the Foe. So when you destroy an enemy unit, your unit becomes consecrated. At the end of your turn, each consecrated unit within range of an objective consecrates that objective if it hasn't already, and the consecrated unit is no longer consecrated. Then in any battle round, to gain victory points, you gain 3 victory points if you consecrated 1 to 2 objectives, or if you consecrated 3 or more, you gain 6 victory points. Then from the second battle round onwards, at the end of your command phase, you get 4 victory points for controlling 1 or more objectives, and you get 4 victory points if you control more than your opponent. Plus you get an additional 5 at the end of the game if you consecrated your opponent's home objective. Then the last Purge the Foe mission is Destroyer's Wrath. This is when you play against priority assets. Again, any battle round, 3 victory points when 1 or more enemy units are destroyed. In the second battle round onward, controlling 1 or more objectives gives you 4 victory points, and you get an additional 6 when you control more objectives than your opponent. Along with at the end of your turn, if you destroy more enemy units than friendly units were lost the previous turn, you get 4 victory points. But as you can probably tell from the missions I just explained, Purge the Foe is so stupidly easy to accomplish it's not even funny. An example of this is a game of Knights vs Death Guard I watched in my Discord server. The Knights player almost won the game with Consecrate just by solely consecrating objectives, and of course scoring secondaries, but they lost by 1 point. But still, Purge the Foe is so hilariously easy, I think GW is either gonna shuffle dispositions around or change the detachment cost.
Well, I sure hope somebody picks up that phone, because I f***ing called it!
Can you spot this chopper?
Hold on, I'll do it right now.
Thanks.
I see him. All right.
So Recon is focused around objective control and other actions that mess with your enemy's mission, so it's a back and forth until someone wins. Recon I feel like is made for armies that are more mobile, moving around the board and also holding objectives depending on what your opponent is playing. With Reconnaissance Sweep being when you're fighting take and hold, to score victory points, it's like Engage on all fronts where you want to have friendly units in different table quarters, where for Recon Sweep, you get 3 victory points if 3 or more friendly units are wholly within 3 different table quarters and not within 6 inches of the center of the board. And you get 6 VP if you have 4 or more units in all table quarters, and this can be scored in any battle round by the way. You also get 1 victory point for each enemy unit destroyed in a turn. Then the second battle round onward, you get 3 victory points at the end of your command phase if you control 1 or more objectives. When you're fighting Purge the Foe, you play Triangulation, and to score victory points, you score by triangulating objectives. This is also where action monkeying starts, and to action monkey, you use an action in the shooting phase, so from henceforth if I say take an action, that means it happens in the shooting phase. To triangulate an objective onward of your second turn, a friendly unit within range of an objective does an action, and at the end of your turn, that objective is triangulated, and you place an operation marker on the objective to score. Operation markers are also going to be a thing going forward for even more missions, so expect to be monkeying around quite a bit more. But you score victory points in the second battle round onward when you control 1 or more objectives for 4 victory points at the end of your command phase. Then triangulation scoring is done in the end phase of your turn. You score 3 victory points if 1 objective is triangulated, 6 for 2 objectives, and 10 for 3 or more objectives. Then you get 10 victory points at the end of the battle if you control 4 or more objectives. Surveil the Foe is when you're fighting a disruption army. This is where operation markers come into play more, because your job with this mission is to remove operation markers to prevent your opponent from scoring, and to remove operation markers, you just have to get on the objective that has a marker on it. To score victory points in any battle round, you just have to surveil an enemy unit. To surveil an enemy, you use an action, and any enemy that's visible to the unit surveilling and is within 18 inches and hasn't been surveilled yet is now surveilled, and you can surveil as many times as you want as long as you have the units that can. To score, in any battle round, if you surveilled one or more enemy units and they're not within range of an objective with operation markers, you score 4 victory points. Then the second battle round onward at the end of your command phase, controlling one or more objectives gets you 4 victory points, and if you control more than your opponent, you score an additional 4 victory points, along with you also getting 5 victory points at the end of each of your turns if there are no enemy operation markers on the field. Gathering intel is the Recon mirror match, where you score in the first battle round and get 6 victory points if you control one or more center objectives. And then in the second battle round onward at the end of your command phase, controlling one or more objectives gets you 4 victory points. And at the end of your turn, for each friendly unit that extracted intelligence, you get 7 victory points. To extract intel, you perform an action by targeting one of your friendly units that's within range of an objective with no operation markers from your army on it, and you place an operation marker on it to extract intelligence. And you can extract intelligence as long as there's a friendly unit on a different objective marker from the one that you just extracted intel from. So if you extract intel from 2 different objectives, you get 14 victory points total. Then at the end of the battle, if you have 3 or more operations markers on the battlefield, you get 5 victory points, and an additional 5 victory points if there's an operations marker in range of your opponent's home objective. Then finally, to round off Recon, is Search and Scour. This is when you're fighting priority assets. This one is stupidly simple. In any battle round at the end of your turn, you get 3 victory points for controlling one or more central objectives, and you get an additional 2 victory points if one or more enemy units that started the turn in terrain are destroyed. Then the second battle round onward, at the end of your command phase, you get 4 victory points for each objective you control, excluding your home objective, of course. Then at the end of the battle, if no enemy units are wholly within your territory, you get 5 victory points. So Recon isn't all that difficult to accomplish. You more or less just need to make sure your army has enough action monkeys on top of units that can shoot if you do choose to play this disposition, because if you don't, expect to get overwhelmed if you didn't shoot and your units fold like paper. Okay, so the final 2 dispositions are arguably the worst since you have to do a lot of actions, and like I said earlier, if you're killing, you aren't doing actions, so no victory points. And if you aren't killing but doing actions, you get victory points, but at the cost of probably being steamrolled, which is why I can see these 2 dispositions getting tweaked in the future. Now, Disruption isn't the worst, but it's bad because 3 out of the 5 missions require you to do actions, but let's be honest, you're probably going to be playing against Purge the Foe. So delaying action is when you're playing against Purge the Foe. At the end of your turn in any battle round, you get 2 victory points for each enemy unit destroyed. Then the second battle round onward, 4 victory points if you control one or more objectives. And at the end of your turn, 3 victory points for controlling one or more central objectives. This will probably be the most common one you'll play as long as everyone and their mother is using Purge the Foe, so it'll honestly be a cakewalk for you, unless you face a stat check Purge the Foe army, that is. For Death Trap, which is when you're fighting Take and Hold, you score by performing an action booby-trapping an objective. To do this, a friendly unit within range of an objective or in a terrain piece not in your deployment zone traps that terrain piece, and you place an operation marker in that terrain and it's been trapped. During any battle round at the end of your turn, you get 2 victory points for each trapped terrain piece, plus an additional 3 victory points for each terrain piece trapped that's an objective. Then on top of that, if you destroyed one or more enemy units that started the turn in trapped terrain, you get 3 victory points. Then from the second battle round onward, at the end of your command phase, 4 victory points if you control one or more objectives. Outmaneuver is the mirror match of Disruption. You score in any battle round if you control the enemy's home objective and you get 10 victory points. In the first battle round, you get 4 victory points at the end of your turn for each objective you control. For the second and third battle round at the end of your command phase, you now get 5 victory points for each objective you control. Then for the fourth battle round onward, 6 victory points for each objective you control. And if you couldn't already tell, Outmaneuver is probably one of the easiest Disruption missions. Smoke and Mirrors is for the Recon matchup. In any battle round, you score 2 victory points for each objective that's decoyed, which means do an action and place an operation marker on an objective that isn't decoyed yet. And you can do it to any number of objectives that haven't been decoyed. Then an additional 2 victory points for each decoyed objective in your opponent's territory. Then second battle round onwards, End of the command phase, 4 victory points if you control 1 or more objectives, and at the end of the game, 10 victory points if 4 or more objectives are decoyed. Then finally is locate and deny. You use this disposition when you're fighting priority assets. So at the start of the battle, select 5 terrain areas not in your deployment zone and put operation markers in each of them. Then in any battle round at the end of your turn, 4 victory points if 1 or more enemy units that started the turn within range of 1 or more objectives were destroyed, and you can also score an additional 4 victory points if one of your operation markers remain in a terrain piece and there are no enemy units within it. Then second battle round onward, end of your command phase, 4 victory points if you control 1 or more objectives. Then at the end of the battle, 5 victory points if you have 1 operation marker left with a friendly unit and no enemy units near it. Also, you have an action that prevents your enemy from scoring. If you're within range of a central objective, once per turn, if you control that objective, at the end of your turn, you perform a sensor sweep and you remove one of your operation markers from the battlefield. Doing this prevents your opponent from scoring since they also have to do a sensor sweep to score. Now, it might not seem like these are that bad, but like I said, 3 out of the 5 of these you need to perform actions to score or prevent your opponent from scoring if, big if, your opponent isn't playing Purge the Foe.
That doesn't make things any clearer for the audience.
Strategic value absolute.
Now we get to arguably the worst disposition of them all in my opinion, priority assets. So all of these missions require you to do actions to score, and most of them require it to be done in a stupid area of the map or the highly contested central objectives. Because if you aren't doing actions, you aren't scoring, and if you're doing actions, you aren't killing, which means you're probably going to be run over easily, because your opponent is going to do everything in their power to kill that unit that performs actions so you can't score anymore. The only way I can see priority assets working effectively is horde armies, because of the sheer number of bodies on the board that can perform actions, which ironically I forgot to mention is how Recon plays too, but it isn't as difficult. But the first mission of priority assets is secure assets. This is when you're fighting take and hold. So for this mission, your action is called Secure Asset, where you have to control an objective and have a friendly unit within range of that objective to perform an action, and you need to also control it by the end of your turn. Because in any battle round, at the end of your turn you score 4 victory points if you secured the asset, and you also get 2 victory points if you destroyed 1 or more enemy units on the central objectives. Then from the second battle round onward, 4 victory points if you controlled 1 or more objectives, and also 4 victory points if you control 3 or more objectives, as opposed to take and hold, which plays Inescapable Domain. Then you play Vital Link when you fight a Purge the Foe army, which you better hope you do because this is one of the easiest ones, since in any battle round, you get 2 victory points if you control 1 or more central objectives, and an additional victory point if you have an operation marker within range of these objectives. And I have been told by Ickbard, because GW sucks at wording things, you can stack a lot of them on the same terrain feature and pretty much be a troll and farm victory points. So you need to perform an action on these central objectives, of course, to place an operation marker. Then from the second battle round onwards, 4 victory points for controlling 1 or more objectives, and an additional 4 victory points if 1 or more of those are central objectives. Then at the end of the battle, 10 victory points if you control your opponent's home objective. While contrary to what you have to do, Purge the Foe's job is to f***ing kill, of course, and just control 1 or more objectives for 4 victory points, or 6 victory points if they control more than you, which, spoiler alert, they'll want to kill you, so of course they eventually will. When you're fighting Disruption, you play Extract Relic. So in any battle round, perform an action on a central objective to perform a sensor sweep, and remove 1 of your opponent's operation markers per turn. You get 4 victory points in any battle round if you performed a sensor sweep, 3 victory points if 1 or more enemy units are destroyed if they started the turn within range of an objective, 4 victory points if only 1 of your opponent's operation markers are on the battlefield, and you're in the same terrain piece as that operation marker with no enemy units in it either. Then in the second battle round onward, 4 victory points if you control 1 or more objectives. Then at the end of the battle, 5 victory points if there is only 1 operation marker remaining, and you're in the same terrain piece with no enemies nearby. Did I mention Disruption is going to be playing Sensor Sweep, so have fun fighting over the central objectives. Vanguard Operation is a bit more forgiving but still annoying, and you play this mission when you're fighting Reconnaissance. You get 4 victory points in any battle round if you performed a Vanguard Operation, which means go to any terrain area in enemy territory and perform an action. And you can also score 2 victory points if you destroy 1 or more enemy units that turn. Then the second battle round onward, 4 victory points for controlling 1 or more objectives, and at the end of the battle, 10 victory points if you control your opponent's home objective, and Recon play Search and Scour. Then the final mission is Sabotage. This is the priority assets mirror match. To score in any battle round at the end of your turn, you score 3 victory points for committing sabotage, which means perform an action within range of an objective that isn't your home, of course, and sabotage that objective. And it can be done as many times in a turn as long as it's a different objective, if I'm understanding this correctly. You also get an additional 2 victory points for each of those units that committed sabotage within range of an objective in enemy territory. Then from the second battle round onward, 4 victory points for controlling 1 or more objectives. But my god, priority assets is the worst force disposition to play. I honestly think you're just asking to lose the game. If you willingly play priority assets, because everyone else's missions are way easier to play as opposed to action monkeying with units that would have been better suited to shooting so they don't get destroyed in melee. The way I see it, priority assets will only work if you have an ample amount of bodies, or you try to get rid of as many enemy units as possible turn 1 to have the numbers advantage for objective control. But as I see it right now, unless GW adjusts it, priority assets will be the least played detachment disposition, since people will play a 2+1 DP skew to always choose Purge the Foe or Take and Hold. And I know it's really early on, but in 12th edition they either get rid of force dispositions or replace the bad ones with more desirable dispositions. But as it stands right now, the best force dispositions in order are Purge the Foe being first, because of course it is, since you just have to kill on top of holding an objective to score, and it's stupidly easy to accomplish since that's what every previous edition boiled down to in the end to some degree. Take and Hold is second because it's what we've been doing since Warhammer started to use objectives, but again, not as straightforward as Purge the Foe. Recon is third because it starts to have actions, but they aren't as detrimental as Disruption or priority assets, since they don't force you to go to a high traffic or hard to reach area of the board to score on primary, and most of them are hold this objective with a little bit of killing, while Disruption is fourth since 3 out of the 5 require actions, but only 1 of them requires you to be in the center objective, so you have to be super flexible with how you play, and of course, to no one's surprise, priority assets is dead last. Because every mission requires you to be an action monkey to score, and 3 out of the 5 require those actions in a stupid place, like high traffic central objectives, or your opponent's territory for said actions. But due to Disruption requiring you to be super flexible and not as straightforward, priority assets and Disruption are really just fighting for last place. So just play any disposition but Disruption and priority assets if you want to win consistently, because while all of these require you to tailor your list for what disposition you're playing and to a degree fighting, priority assets is the worst because your list might work for this mission but not this mission because you didn't build appropriately to get into enemy territory or have tough enough units or bodies to hold central objectives and do actions, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But my god, this really has been my longest video to date, and my voice is killing me, and thank god I'm not streaming the day of and the day after at the time of recording this video. So anyways, thanks for watching the video. If you want to support the channel, I would greatly appreciate it if you liked the video, subscribed, and maybe becoming a channel member too, along with hitting the bell for upload notifications. But I'll see you all in the next video, and remember, when you play Warhammer, being poor is a choice.